Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin, back again with another reaction video. Now, we got a little bit of a different one here today. I actually watched this video this morning and I was moved by it so much. I was like, I want to do a reaction with Justin on this. I want to take a look at the whole thing just to get the message out, because I thought the message was so good from this video that in any which way, form it can get out, I'm good to see it get out there. And he even says in it, you know, if you can share this video with your friends, share it.
Oh, perfect.
We're going to do it for you, Hans. We're going to share your video because I think it has an amazing message. It's called, "This is How We End All Wars."
And we've actually interviewed this guy.
Yeah.
We've interviewed him, and so go refer to that if you like this video, and then go check out all this stuff and subscribe to him.
Yeah.
This guy's a very intelligent person, in my opinion. Has a lot of good stuff to say.
So this is how we end all wars. Pretty good topic for the day and age that we live in. We won't keep you waiting, and this is a little bit of a longer one, so we're not going to stop it a million times, and we'll give you our honest take on
it. This is how we end all wars. There is one and only one reason for the madness that the human being is manifesting. This is a big surprise to many, but if you stay with me, I will explain why it is so. But before doing so, I have to say that this fact, that there is ultimately only one reason for war, this fact means that any other attempt to unravel the madness, and not at the same time addressing this soul cause at the root, will simply just result in us perpetuating the madness. Furthermore, we have to acknowledge that those people who need the most to hear this message, they are those people who are most likely, those people who most likely don't even start watching this video. Or if they do, they are the ones that are quickest to drop out again. We also need to understand that the self-absorption and the self-centeredness of the human ego is very rigid. So we cannot wait for other people to change. We have to change. We have to live the change that we want to see in the world. This means that we have to be deeply committed to end any kind of conflict within ourselves. If we are not willing to do so, then we will continue to be a part of the problem. Okay, so what is this root cause? What is behind all the wars that I am talking about? It's ignorance. It's ignorance of our own true being. It is a failure to see the truth about oneself. Coming to see the truth about oneself is what all of my videos are about. So please go check them out afterwards. This video is about what the implications are as long as we live in ignorance about who we truly are. But mind you, there is no one to blame. This has nothing to do with feeling guilty. do not feel guilty of anything. The reason for this will become clear to you as you watch this video. Okay. The human being is still in its infancy. And if you feel tempted to deny this, that would simply be an expression of this infancy. The vast majority of humanity lives in what could be described as a trance state. A trance state that veils the truth about what a human being truly is. And it is simply because it is so widespread that it perpetuates itself. From inside the trance state, it is impossible to recognize how entrenched oneself is. Also, everywhere the trance state is reconfirming itself. Awakening out of this trance state is what eventually will end all wars. And again, if you feel tempted to deny this, that would simply be an expression of this trance state. So let's talk about this trance state. The typical human being sees itself as a temporary individual existing separate from everything else. It looks into a mirror and it says, "This is me," and that is all that it sees. This idea about being separate from everything else gives rise to some unavoidable consequences. Being afraid of loneliness, being afraid of one's own insignificance, being afraid of getting old, being afraid of dying. All of this creates a mindset that is stored in the subconscious, and it is dictating automatic conditioned behavior. What I've just described is what we usually in spiritual terms are calling the human ego. And again, the human ego will deny it all rigorously. But as I said, this mindset will be stored in the subconscious, and it will be running the show, so to speak. In an effort to seek salvation from the eventual death, and in an effort to heal the trauma of its own perceived insignificance, the human ego is most of the time on a kind of crusade. It is a crusade where the ego seeks to impose its own will on the world. And there you have it. This is the sole reason for all the madness in the world. And if this mindset in the human being is not being addressed, anything else that you do will only be a detour, and it will ultimately just perpetuate the madness. What happens is that this seeing of oneself as being a temporary, separate existence, that leads to the subconscious impression, that leads to the subconscious impression that I am on my own. And from that impression, delusion, greed, hatred, and envy is born. The madness in the world is a direct result of this delusion, this greed, hatred, and envy. Well, okay. You might have the feeling that I am generalizing too much. Is what I'm saying really the case for almost everybody? Yes. But what confuses you is that the consequences of this ignorance are being manifested in many different ways. It sort of becomes a spectrum of behavior, ranging from the obvious dictator to the person being completely apathetic, from the one that is truly on a crusade to impose his or her own will upon the world. And even this is on a spectrum, ranging from the true war maker on a grand scale to the subtle war maker on the job site or in the family. On the other end of the spectrum, you will find a deep, apathetic person. It is the person that has sort of given up. It is the person that feels so depressed about this situation. But then you might argue that in between there is a huge part of the population that is just trying to get by.
So I agree with what he's saying here. And I appreciate the way he speaks. If you want, if it's a little slow, I have turned up the speed on it before, but I actually think that there's something intelligent about speaking slowly. And I agree with a lot he says. I would throw out a suggestion to a lot of people. I've done it in the past, that look into hypnotism a little bit and understanding how the brain receives messages both on a conscious and subconscious level. Yeah. Because I'm a little surprised sometimes when people, with all due respect, will say like, the people that need to hear this will turn it off before they even get started. That is correct. Yeah. The people that need to hear this message probably won't do it. But I'm starting to cultivate an interest in giving people the benefit of the doubt and being like, what if we started reframing things in the positive a little more certainly? Like, this will be heard by the people that need to hear it. Yeah. And will have a positive effect. Just a throwing out there in that realm. But to do the opposite of my advice that I just gave and go down a darker realm, I think that it's this and a little darker than this, because I think that the survival functions and the methods of the mind to like hide its intentions from itself are so deep that people look at reality differently. Like you can program someone. Imagine programming into someone that they are a success no matter what they do. Yeah. Like you can't fail. Yeah. And you like got that delusion locked into someone's mind. They may reframe everything they see to on an unconscious level to prove that to be true. This is like how affirmations work. Yeah, you tell yourself affirmations. I've done affirmations. I do affirmations. Yeah. But if I'm too blinded by that, like this is a phase that one must go through. The whole, probably turn out to be bullcrap phase of personal development, but
Yeah.
nevertheless a necessary phase, I think, is to like discard all that delusion and realize the unity that's at the core of what he's actually saying here. But to dial it back a little bit, to just reiterate what I'm saying, if you're using all these different fail safes and functions to like control your own perception of reality, you probably can't see right. Meaning, you're going to be demonizing things you ought not to be demonizing, and you're going to be. Somebody might be like, "I just got a job promotion," and you're going to be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, still at that crap job."
Oh.
And the person, and then a simple comment might spiral that person into like serious consequence.
Yeah.
And it's based on the person that said, "Oh, really? I thought you hated that job's own unrecognized insecurity." They don't even realize they're insecure,
Yeah.
but they'd be like, "Oh, no, it can't be my fault. Like, I don't, I wished them the best. I just thought it was bad that they're still at that job." It's all these like, the truth of the matter. Sometimes there are people where, it's like incumbent on the intelligent person to have a good, non-biased, objective understanding of everything that's going around them and everybody that's around them, to know that sometimes telling someone the reality of their situation could be catastrophic to their psyche.
Yeah.
Like, if there are some people that would turn this off because they can't handle it. If they understood what he was actually saying, they might be like,
Yeah.
so do what stage you're at. We crawl before we walk. We were cavemen before we, became agriculturalists. And then after that, we built society, one thing after another. The same things play out in society. There's some people that are going through their personal development phase.
Yeah.
I'm wearing nice suits and I'm getting all that money. Don't interrupt them. What's the Star Trek thing protocol? Don't interrupt. Let them play it out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. The good news is there's more and more people waking up. There's more and more people finding interest in the very things this man's saying, because that's where we're at. But I also wouldn't look at nature and be like, "Stupid nature. We better do something about it."
Yeah.
We're a product of nature.
Yeah. Well,
we're coming to these conclusions based on evolution.
I like how we prefaced right near the beginning that we are at like the beginning of this, of like what he's talking about. We're at the beginning of having these conversations and starting to really, truly talk about it and see how it's kind of like...
If it's helpful for you to regard humanity in its infancy, then do it.
Yeah.
Because in some sense, he's absolutely right. In some sense, we are in our infancy, if you keep in mind eternity.
Yeah,
But in another sense, we've got a lot of history behind us.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Learn history. Learn some hypnotism. Learn some history. Learn what the history of how humans have behaved and what we can expect for the future.
Yeah.
All of it's good.
And that they do not create any madness. Well, yes and no. Why are they all not saying stop to the madness? Why are they not investing in addressing the problem directly? Why does a podcast like this one not get shared in the same way as all the drama? Well, there is a reason. The human being living in this trance state does not want to give up on any of the conveniences or privileges that it has for the sake of the whole. The human being does not want to give up on any of its conveniences or privileges that it has for the sake of the whole. It has a ton of excuses for not addressing the real problem. One of the main excuses being, those people over there, they do nothing, so why should I? It has everything to do with what's in it for me. And by that I mean, what's in it for me right now? And if there isn't a guaranteed, obvious reward of some kind right now, or at least in the very near future, the human being living in the trance state couldn't care less. So, in living like that, it becomes a direct contributor to the perpetuation of the madness. The only remedy for this madness is waking up out of the trance state. And by waking up, you will realize a whole new way of understanding existence and of understanding life and yourself. But actually waking up is not something that you choose to do. The impulse to awaken is not a personal impulse. It is an evolutionary impulse. The only question is, do you respond to the impulse? Or do you desperately cling to the trance state? So what does it mean to awaken? What happens when you awaken? Well, you realize very clearly that all the ideas you had about existence, about life, and about yourself are just that. Ideas, convictions. And this realization opens you up to recognize your human beings existing. To recognize your human being's existence as a completely integrated part of everything, of the whole. Picture it like this. An animal does not recognize itself in a mirror, where the human being in the trance state, when it looks into the mirror, it recognizes itself as this temporary separate individual. In contrast to this, the awake human being recognizes itself as everything and everywhere. I know, this does not make any sense to the human being living in the trance state. Just as the animal does not know what it means to recognize itself seeing into a mirror, the unawake human being has no clue to what it means to see oneself as everything and everywhere. Furthermore, it cannot be described to the unawake human being because it will simply not make any sense to the less evolved mind. I know, what I just said is typically frustrating, and it could also make the unawake mind angry. But that's just...
I was feeling there that as he was saying it there, it was like the less evolved mind will not be able to like pick up and right away. That's like a smack to the ego. What do you mean? I'm not lesser evolved. You know, I could just, you know, I feel that even a little bit within myself, you know, is because what he's saying does make sense in respect of, like, yeah, I don't have... Doesn't matter. It feels like it doesn't matter how much meditation I've done or how much, you know, inward soul seeking. It doesn't feel like I am one with the universe. Right?
Well, you've got lots of lives to learn this.
Yeah.
Be reincarnated. What if by the end of your chapter, you know, it's like a face in the yearbook and then it scales out and you see all the lives that came before and you get a view of what's to come and then you incarnate back into it and in that sense, you kind of relinquish the ego a little bit and go, oh, I was so attached to that particular life. Turns out I'm just one of many.
Yeah.
I think that people get fixated on practice. They'll be like, you know, it's amazing how much this reoccurs. You know, people will be like, no. Enough jibber jabber. There's a specific way to do it. If you want to feel connected with everybody, imagine yourself into connection with other people. There's also people that have tried and true ways that claim that you can, you know, have a state of being where it's like, oh, you'll see the mesh of the universe and feel the connection.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different avenues, but if you don't really want to mess around with substances or hardcore month-long meditation retreats, then I don't think that there's anything wrong with trying to conjure a sense of unity with everybody.
Yeah.
Literally thinking about the evidence towards it. Like, there's a field of potentiality. There's a field of consciousness. You know, at the atomic level, there's not really, you know, how similar are we at a molecular level, you know? I mean, after all, no person is an island. I depend on you. You depend on me. I depend on the person that checks me out of the grocery store. We're part of the same system. And to work through to realize and try to just tell yourself, be now conscious adjacent. Get a sense of what it would be to not be the center of the universe, but instead be an aspect of the universe. Regard your dreams. There are dreams that you have that are full of characters inhabiting your mind. You know, sometimes you're different in your mind. Regard the like illusory, elastic nature of the mind, you know, and with your imagination, just try to conjure a sense of it. If that's the best you can do, then that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. I think you've actually given a really good tip there. I think I'm going to try a little some of that more. At least try it. It's not, I feel like I have probably dabbled with what you're talking about, but maybe putting some focus on it.
It's trial and error.
Yeah.
What else can we do?
Yeah.
How do we get giant chunks of metal to soar through the air other than like shove all the, you know, gas and dynamite and blast that, get it up there, get the steel up there.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a time to like sit down and just try to let it happen and then relinquish, and then sometimes it happens only upon the releasing and letting go of all those practices. But there's also a million zillion other things to occupy your time in any given day. You know, let me go sit on the beach with a beer. I'm bored, let's go involve myself in some drama. There's so many things taking up our time, lessons to be worked through and learned through already. To point to where we're going, yeah, it's fascinating, but it's also okay. Like, sometimes I think you don't need to worry about, am I a candidate for this? If you want it to be so, tell yourself it's so. I want to be enlightened, therefore I'm enlightened. If somebody comes along and says, did you just say you're enlightened? Ew, cringe, gross. Well, they have the right to do that, but you got the right to be like, that's what you say. I'm enlightened, baby. If you want to be that way, say you're that way. Demonstrate it, ape your favorite characters, you know, behave like them, talk like Osho for an afternoon, just to see what it feels like. Don't let someone come along and tell you what it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know? And I understand that's not everybody's brand. There's also the people that are like, okay, that just weirded me out. You put me off the path. Let me go run back to an ashram and get some specific advice for how to do it. That's totally okay too.
Yeah.
It's all okay. You think you got a stake in it? What are you, God? Maybe you are.
Just how it is. As I said earlier, the unawake human being sees itself as a separate, temporary, individual existence. Also, as mentioned before, this worldview gives rise to some unavoidable consequences. For instance, feeling isolated and feeling insignificant. This in turn ends up being what motivates the unawake human being. And the result is anything from conflicts in the family to full-blown wars. There is no ending to war as long as the human being is living in this trance state. There is no ending to war as long as the human being is living in this trance state. War is a direct result of the human being trying to escape its own feeling of insignificance. War is a direct result of the human being trying to escape its own feeling of insignificance.
Two things I thought about there. One was that the Bhagavad Gita takes place on a battlefield.
Yeah.
And they introduce spiritual concepts in the midst of a battle. You know what I mean? What do you... So, and the other thing is that's that story that I bring up often about the Buddha feeding himself to a tiger so that it had milk to feed its cubs. Like, I'm going to piece out of this existence. I'm going to feed myself to into this tiger, and that's the end of that incarnation. Then he's reborn again, down the line.
Yeah.
His followers were like, "Where'd he go? He fed himself to a tiger. We were walking through the jungle, saw a tiger, couldn't feed her cubs, so he fed himself to it. Like, yeah. I'm out. Peace, And then, so there's that concept, like utter selflessness. Not even utter selflessness to humans, not so that you can get a plaque on the wall, not so you can be immortalized by something, just... screw it. I can give my life for some other thing.
Yeah.
That versus the idea of being in the midst of a war and someone being like, be enlightened now.
Yeah.
And being like, the bottom line is you can't tell me what to be in any situation. I'm going to be exactly who I am. And I wouldn't put the onus on myself or like, oh, I've got like a, there's something I can do to contribute to no war, because I'm not clear war's bad. Is war bad? Is it bad? God, what did you do? We've been warring for centuries. Look at most ancient art. It's like usually a war.
Yeah.
The artists were like, the only game in town was to paint war. There's a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you scale it back to the earliest depictions all the way up to now, there's many depictions of war battles.
I hear what you're saying there with the concepts of good and bad. What really are there? In the macro scale, zoomed out lens of things, right?
But it's also this assumption that like waking up or something is going to change this. Like I think about the deep intelligence some has. This guy is very smart to me. Osho was very smart to me. But then I look at somebody like Elon Musk who's like creating crazy innovations, and one of his main goals is to like get us to another planet.
Yeah.
Does he ever talk about spirituality? Maybe he does. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be the primary thing he talks about. Super hyper crazy genius.
Yeah.
Leagues beyond me. And he's got a math brain, just constant math. But also has a huge family, loves his family, has interpersonal relationship, like dynamic, goes on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Does he ever talk about spirituality? There's more to life than spirituality. There's more to life than all these things. And I don't think it's necessarily a given that it's like the bottom line here is that war is bad. I'm not a fan of war. I would like to avoid any war. I'd be psyched if the world declared that's the end of war. I'd be like, good for us. But there's no way to know all things. There's no way to know what the function of all this competition and striving is.
Yeah.
And some people, good luck trying to like communicate to them that the only reason you really want a war is because you're unconscious.
Yeah.
What I just said is not against what he's teaching. I'm just saying that there's a million excuses why not to accept consciousness now. And some of my favorite teachers impede that road. They're like, that's a foolish attitude. You don't decide when you're conscious. You don't decide when you're awake. But what if you do? What if you just say, that's it? I'm gonna look at things as they are. I've only got the faculties I have. My IQ's 82. What am I supposed to do? Then forget it. I'm enlightened. I guess I'll feed the homeless. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm limited.
Yeah.
We all have different skills and ability, and there's somebody out there who's a warmonger who's like intelligent in that role.
Yeah.
You couldn't feed him no consciousness, nothing. He'd be like, okay, but this is how we feed our citizens is by like selling arms and doing all this wicked stuff. And I discarded any notion of good versus bad long time ago.
Yeah.
I take care of mine and I obliterate which gets in the way.
Yeah.
It's, I'm just trying to like weigh it against that mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for the individual to just, some of these things, listen to what he says and try it. Try to do what he says. I don't know what else to say. I guess I didn't need to add to it.
It is the feeling of being a fragment, the feeling of being isolated, the feeling of being separate, the feeling of being lonely, the feeling of being insignificant. It is all of that fuels it all. All of these feelings, combined with different personality structures, is what is creating anything from the dictator on the grand scale to the dictator on the job site, or the dictator at home. And it also creates the ones that just simply do not want to risk anything by speaking out loud. This podcast was actually motivated by a comment that I got on one of my older videos. The comment goes like this. You talk about war and not watching the news. For me, this is my problem. I saw what happened to over 1,200 men, women and babies on October 7th. These are my relatives. I am old enough to remember people, when I was young, who had numbers on their arms from the Nazi death camps, some even from Denmark. Unless I can believe that it is all an illusion, how can I not feel anger and total sorrow? My heart burns with sadness. I feel your pain. But what happened was a result of thousands of years of ignorance on both sides. Trying to eliminate ignorance by war is ignorance. Who are your relatives? Who are your relatives? So I want to show you something. This is you. And you have two parents. And your parents, they have each two parents. That makes it 4 grandparents. Then your 4 grandparents, they have each 2 parents. So when we take the next step back, there are 8 grandparents. Each of your grandparents, they have 2 parents. And so it goes on, back into time. So now I ask you, if we go back, say, 2,000 years, we go back to year 0. How many ancestors do you think that you have? Well, let's do the math. For every generation, the amount of ancestors doubles. How many generations have gone by since year 0? Well, on an average, there is between 20 and 30 years between each generations. So let's say that we got 25 years between each generations. That means that in a time span of 2,000 years, there are approximately 80 generations. So when we know that, and then we double the amount of ancestors for each generation, and we do that 80 times, what kind of number do you think that we come up with? Well, it is a incredible huge number. And I almost do not know how to express this number. But as I understand, it is actually called 1 quintillion, 208 quadrillion, 925 trillion, 819 billion, 614 million, 629,000, 706,176. It is a mind-boggling number. And you might think that this is just theory, but no. This is an actuality. There is nothing wrong with the math. If we then estimate the population on the Earth at year 0, most estimates says that at year 0 there were 300 million people living. Then how is that possible? Even if we, by today's standards, say that there is living 8.1 billion people on planet Earth, that is still a much, much, much smaller amount than the amount of ancestors that the math shows that you have if you go back 2,000 years. So what is going on here? Well, we have to take into account that there is a phenomenon called pedigree collapse. And that means that over many generations, it is inevitable that distant relatives, they were married, meaning the same person may appear multiple times in this family tree. And this reduces the actual number of unique ancestors. But that is not really my point. My point is that this number is so incredible, huge, that the amount of ancestors you got seems to be vastly larger than the entire population at year 0 my question to you is, where does that leave space for my unique lineage of ancestors, independent of your ancestors? There simply are no space for a unique lineage separated from everybody else. The math is so crystal clear that we are indeed all related. Then the mind says, well, yes, but I draw a line some 3 or 4 or 5 generations back. But if you do that, you are simply just fooling yourself. The math is crystal clear. There are no unique, separated lineage of ancestors. We are all related, and we have to wake up to this fact. For as long as we do not do that, we will keep on viewing other people as strangers. There are no such thing as your ancestors separated from everybody else. That is the delusion. So there are not somebody else who needs to wake up. You have to wake up. We have to wake up. That is the only remedy. Do not wait.
I'm just thinking about what role experience plays in this, like some of us are, you look at history, some of the figures that stand out, like Buddha, Christ, and others.
Yeah.
And like they stand out as like awakened beings and stuff like that. And now you see a little more people claiming to have awakenedness and behaving in gentle, loving manner. But I'm thinking about the role experience plays here. When I was growing a family, the tradition with us was circumcision. And it wasn't till I saw a real life circumcision that I finally realized what's the barbarism of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't till maybe I watched some videos about factory farming, that you could talk about, shouldn't we be concerned with certain practices of like how we're getting stuff manufactured? And it won't be till you see something close enough that it has an impact on you that changes.
Yeah.
So consciousness wise, this video is perfect because it's a man sharing it. We're now sharing it too. That's sometimes the best you can do. But experientially, it kind of is what it is, right?
Yeah.
You have to be... Sometimes things are just concept till you see it for yourself, and then you go, I can't go back. I can't go back to behaving that way because I felt it, I smelled it, I saw it. I was, I was there. Vast experience. So in some sense, the answer is like, go get as much experience as you can so that you can arrive at the conclusions that happen once you've gotten experience.
Yeah. Well, maybe maybe pointing towards, because this is about like ending wars. Could you say that maybe if you saw some wars, maybe you wouldn't have wars?
There you go. If you didn't turn a blind eye to it, like I just want to cover my tracks a little bit here too. Earlier I was like, are you so sure war's bad? Obviously, I am anti-war. I'm pro any means that would end war. I don't like it. I don't think it's good. War is even bad, is what I'll say. But that, you get ads all the time on your YouTube and everything else, people talking about war and, armchair idea of it. A lot of people will be like, well, it's got nothing to do with me. Why would I have to think about it? Why would I have to, you put it out of your mind until the one day that you don't put it out of your mind for whatever reason. And you go, well, let me just take a look here. And then you see some of the desolation and you're like, jeez, maybe there's a way for me to like send some money. And then the ball gets rolling in that way, and you're like, I never even had empathy before. I didn't even look twice at the desolate people in my city that I walk by.
Yeah.
But one little piece of empathy gets the ball rolling, and then a few years later, and you're like an empathetic person. You're still only going to accomplish so much within one lifetime. Thank God you got dozens of lifetimes.
Yeah.
Millions, maybe. But everything within its due time. The answer to this is in the presentation of it. The answer to all this is in the fact that he's talking about it, sharing it, and the knowledge of it is spreading. That's enough for that. But I just wanted to add here that experience does play a role, you know what I mean? And by saying that, I'm saying like, no wonder we are where we're at. No wonder others are where they're at.
Yeah.
It's not for no reason. Everybody's experiencing things at different rates, you know? Yeah. Don't even judge somebody if you see them pretending to be more compassionate than they are. Yeah. You know, I just got such a bleeding heart for this. And you're like, you don't really have feelings of empathy, so you're judging. Let them do their thing. Isn't pretending to be nice oftentimes better than, being certain about your callousness?
Yeah.
There's, the point that I keep pausing this very annoyingly to try to point out is that, in a large sense, this idea of enlightenment and awakening keeps returning, and that's a big part of what this is. You need to awaken for us to stop doing this. But part of awakening, in my opinion, or from what I can gather, is about like accepting what is right now. This is happening right now.
Yeah.
It's only ever now.
Yeah.
So what's the deal when I look around, when I go, holy crap, I've incarnated and I'm a human. What's going on here? Oh, there's wars everywhere. I wouldn't be like, well, that's not right. Let me etch-a-sketch that out of existence. You can't. Yeah. It's there. So understanding why it's there, understanding why people are where they're at, and then doing your part by making a video like this and sharing it.
Wait for somebody else to wake up. You are the human race. There are no different races of humanity. We are all one. If you have stayed with me this far in this video, I salute you. I thank you. Would you please do me this favor? Please have the courage to share this video. To share this video with friends, with families, with anybody. No, I do certainly not care about being popular. That is absolutely not the point. But sometimes my heart cries when I see the kind of exposure the madness gains. How are we to change if the madness always gets to be the most exposed? We are changing the world by changing ourselves. And the only real way we can change ourselves is by waking up. Thank you for listening, my friend.
Ooh, that was a doozy.
I know.
He has guided meditations, right?
I don't know. He is a guided meditation.
He is a guided meditation.
When that's how I found this video this morning, because I'm subscribed to him, and I do my meditations in the morning. And every now and then I put meditation music on and him at the same time, and I listen to them together.
That's good.
And this was a little bit more of a serious one. I had to like open my eyes a couple of times because he doesn't usually have like presentations on the screen. Solid video. The numbers thing though, I don't know. I haven't been able to get over. I hope someone doesn't say like, those numbers are so off, because something about those numbers, I don't know how to make sense of them. I'm not good at math, so I don't know.
But I reserve the right to say absolute nonsense.
So
and contradict myself in all kinds of things.
I don't know. Wait, what was going on with those
this
numbers?
This is consciousness work, baby.
But
fast and loose.
I can't say I agree or disagree with it because I don't really understand it. But the part of his message, the internal looking within ourselves and all the other stuff that he was talking about, definitely resonates. And hopefully it resonates with you out there. If you like this video, guys, is there anything else you want to say before
I just wanted to reiterate that it's a good message. Go check out the rest of his stuff. Put it on and chill out. Light a candle and some incense and get enlightened while you're doing it.
He is great to meditate to.
And then just one little final thing is, a lot of it's pretty practical and pragmatic and whatever. But then sometimes something happens when you get into the realm of, now just awaken. Like something happens where you're like, yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think it means what it means, and it maybe it's not so mystical as we like to make it seem sometimes. You're in the how do you usually wake up? Do you hit the snooze alarm a bunch of times? It's always different. Sometimes it's all at once. Sometimes it's a little slowly, but slowly. If you're listening to spiritual people, pontificating about this stuff, you're in the process of awakening. Too late to turn back. Yeah. Enjoy the ride.
Well, this was a long one. This is a doozy. If you made it this far, congratulations, like Hans said. That's amazing. You're one of the very, very few. But like he said, spread the message around. If you liked our video, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and everyone, till next time, stay spiritual.